I have the memory.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It
might
be
very real,
like it's very much. It's very much like a dumb
like Ryan.
No, my second was like.
It was harsh.
It's definitely more.
Did you advertise this one?
Like, the atmosphere is very good. Like when I was talking about VPN,
Let's go on.
like, it's so harsh about VPN.
Select. Hello everybody, welcome to MySec Southfield. My name is Brett Hansen. I am the Southfield coordinator.
Hi.
Hi. All right, so everyone here knows the basic announcements, but I'm going to go through them anyways. We have MySec Jackson meets the second Tuesday, MySec Lansing meets the second Wednesday, and MySec Southfield, which is the second Thursday, which is the best day of the entire month. All right, so we also have ISC Squared, North Oakland ISSA, Motor City ISSA, and Lansing ISSA. So if you get into security, there's a lot of meetings that you can attend in a single month, more than what's physically possible, but there is really good information out there. So we want everybody to be a part of MySec. If you have a topic for a talk, lightning talk, or even looking to speak, please reach out to me and we'll get you up here, or we'll see if we can find somebody who's an expert in that particular area of expertise and get them up there so we can all get educated. Announcements. MySec Social is the Red Fox Pub on June 28th at 6:30. So it's above Cantina Diablos. We have been going to Jolly Pumpkin. We thought we'd mix it up a little bit, try something new, some new appetizers. We'll see how all that works out, and we'll go from there. Job postings. Right now, I work for Blue Cross. We are looking for a SOC manager. So if you're really good at managing a SOC, you know security, reach out to me. I'll get you talking directly to the director. Is there any other job postings out there? People like to share? Anybody looking? We're all employed. That is a really good sign. The economy's doing well. What about other announcements? Cons, talks, anything going on? Fantastic. Special events. All right, well, with that all being said, we're going to start off with evil twin Wi-Fi attacks with Jason.
Good.
Thank you, everybody. So, like Brett said, I'm going to be talking to you today about evil twins. So, kind of the plan that I see going here, going to give you guys an overview of evil twin attacks for the uninitiated. Take you through a basic version of the attack, then take you through a more advanced one, take you through a hypothetical attack plan that basically makes use of some of the techniques that I'm going to cover here, do kind of a broader discussion on some of the stuff that I found and some of the impressions that I came away from this research on, talk a little bit about some potential mitigation strategies, and then cover some avenues of potential further investigation, either stuff that I might do or anybody that finds this stuff interesting, some additional avenues that might be worth taking a look at. So first off, just a little about myself for those that don't know me. My name is Jason Caminsky. I'm a security analyst at the CBI Security Operations Center. I'm also an independent security researcher. I do lots of projects like this. I work on independent bug bounties. User Helmutje on BugCrowd. I've got not a huge number, but a respectable number of bounties to my credit on that site. I'm also a certified ethical hacker. A bit about my kind of security motivation. I originally got into and remain in security. My primary motivation is curiosity. I like figuring out how systems work of all sorts, technology, social, gaming, like all of that stuff. I like figuring out rule sets and how they work. And I tend to find that the best way to learn how something works is to try to break it or rip it apart. I have a couple operating principles that I came away from kind of this research and this experience with that I kind of wanted to highlight here. First off, I learned a great deal about the intersection of behavior and technology. That place, if you are looking for security vulnerabilities, there's gold in them, they're hills. That is a prime place to find vulnerabilities. Also, I learned that humans tend not to ask questions when things appear to be working. So anything that you can do to make things appear to be working from an offensive perspective is going to be to your benefit. So first off, let's do kind of just a brief overview of evil twin attacks for anybody that isn't familiar with it. I suspect most are. But according to Wikipedia, an evil twin is a fraudulent Wi-Fi access point that appears to be legitimate and is set up to eavesdrop on wireless communications. Now, anybody who's been to like a public event of sufficient size, you're probably going to see stuff like this. You'll see like free Wi-Fi here, or you go to an airport, you see free Detroit Metro Wi-Fi, and you'll probably see a whole bunch of different networks, variants of that. At least some of those are probably evil twins. They're probably somebody putting up a network with a misleading name to try to entice users into connecting to it so that they can do bad things to them. That leads most people to the conventional wisdom that evil twins are kind of like a Wi-Fi equivalent of phishing almost. However, in my going through this and kind of doing some of this research, the impression I came away with is it's not that simple. With phishing, there tends to be this idea that it requires user interaction and that it only works if you have a user that is, that makes a mistake or that gets fooled, and the antidote for it is usually some sort of training. What I'm going to try to show you here is that regardless of training, regardless of a lot of things, an evil twin attack can be more akin to a physical layer attack, the way that things tend to line up in the real world. Basically the equivalent of gaining access to physical cabling. Now, a lot of people don't think of it this way, but Wi-Fi signals are the physical layer. They're basically the Wi-Fi equivalent of physical cables. But whereas with physical cables, we have all kinds of physical security measures in place. We run them underground. We put them behind walls. We have ideally locked doors protecting access points for them. Any network ports, we have a bunch of procedures to try to lock those down. For Wi-Fi, the only thing that we have that basically replaces all of that physical security is an encryption handshake and whatever password or authentication mechanism we assign to that. And I'm going to try to show here, perhaps some of us maybe trust that more than we should. Big thing to keep in mind here, with phishing attacks, that's generally regarded as a social engineering attack. It's basically the human that's failing. Problem is, the way that most people use technology in the real world, machines can kind of trip us up just as much. For instance, show of hands, does anybody in here have Wi-Fi networks that are set to auto-connect? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guarantee at least some of you do, and even if some of you don't, I guarantee there are people in your organization that do. For Windows 10, I believe, it's checked by default. So you have to specifically not do that if you want to avoid that. Therefore, that gives a mechanism. If you can sufficiently impersonate a network, you can basically get a person to connect to it with absolutely zero user interaction. That's big. That cuts into our humans tend not to ask questions when things appear to be working. Another big thing to keep in mind, an attacker can de-authenticate clients at will. And depending on how familiar you are with Wi-Fi protocols, you can send out de-auth packets, and these packets are broadcast. They don't require you to be a member of the network that you're broadcasting onto. They don't require you to be associated with it in any way. Basically, you can scan Wi-Fi frequencies and obtain all the information that you need in order to launch a de-auth packet that can basically tell everybody who's connected to any access point to disconnect from it. Anybody can just do that. Like sometimes if you go to around like a college campus, if you go to coffee shops, if there's some computer science students there that have just learned this, sometimes that'll happen. They'll boot everybody off the Wi-Fi network and snicker to themselves in the corner. But it can be a real problem. And the big thing to keep in mind is, if an evil twin is successful, it's basically the ultimate man-in-the-middle position against anybody that they're able to convince to connect to that network. There's the obvious. If you're connected to an evil twin network, the attacker can sniff any traffic that's going across it, also manipulate any traffic that's going across it, adding new things to any HTTP traffic, changing the IP addresses that return from DNS queries, that sort of thing. But in addition to just kind of these normal man-in-the-middle type attacks, an attacker also, when you join an attacker's network, the attacker most likely has control of the DHCP server that is overseeing that network, and that gives the attacker some additional options. gives the attacker the ability to push DNS server settings to the client. Now, some clients may have a DNS server specified on the endpoint itself, but if you don't, and a lot of people don't, they just inherit it from whatever network that they connect to. That allows the attacker to tell them to use whatever DHCP or whatever DNS server they want. It also allows the attacker to specify the default gateway, which means they are in control of all the routing and all of that comes off of that network. So they can basically send your traffic anywhere they want. Also, this is something that a lot of people don't think about, but DHCP sometimes has vulnerabilities in and of itself. I was looking into this a little bit ago, and I believe Red Hat recently released a patch just earlier this year for their DHCP client. There was a remote code execution vulnerability in it. So if a client happens to be toting one of those around, if the attacker can simply convince them to connect, the DHCP exchange itself can be a mechanism of attack. So it's very bad. It's a very devastating attack if you can pull it off. So let's start looking at some of the nitty-gritty about these attacks. So the first one we're going to cover here is just a basic one. This one is an evil twin for basically an unencrypted network, like the one in the bar across the hall there. So we're going to use a couple of tools to accomplish this. We're going to use a number of tools from the AirCrack suite. If you're not familiar, this is basically a set of easy-to-use Wi-Fi hacking tools. It comes with Kali Linux, but it's freely available. We're also going to be using DNS Mask. It allows you to basically stand up your own DHCP and DNS server and basically administer all of that. That's also included with Kali, also free. And then another important bit, if you do want to get into any sort of work like this, hardware does tend to be a concern. So most laptops, the onboard Wi-Fi card, a lot of times you're not going to be able to do what you need to do in order to launch these sorts of attacks with it. You basically need a Wi-Fi card that supports monitor mode and packet injection. The one that I use, it's an Alpha Networks card. There is a better version of it that I kind of wish I had bought. But the one that I have does what I need it to do, at least as far as this goes. But you'll definitely want to make sure you check out your hardware before you buy it. So the basic plan of this sort of attack, first thing we do is we configure our card and interface to work in the mode that we need it to. Then we go ahead and we scan Wi-Fi networks and choose the target that we want to go after. Then using that information, we can launch our evil twin, launch our DHCP server and all of that. We can then deauth all the clients that are connected to it and basically suppress their ability to connect to that network. And then after a short amount of time, they should, seeking to maintain connectivity, they should come over to our evil twin without user interaction. So let's see if this works. And hopefully I don't need to have my head examined for trying to do a Wi-Fi demo here.
Just don't be off the screen.
do my best. All right, so I have a couple of VMs running here. This one is going to simulate my legitimate access point. And let me actually start. Because ideally, it should not be obvious when a person is connected over from one to the other. I'm basically going to start web servers on both of these. I'm going to be hosting a site that anyone who dares can connect to that should provide a quick and easy visual verification of which one we're connected to. So let me go ahead and launch this one first. Cool. Okay, so I will go ahead and do it with my phone, but anybody that wants, they can follow along at home. Go ahead and connect to the Wi-Fi network Helmutje. Should be unencrypted.
Which one?
Helmutje.
Something that starts with an H.
Yeah.
Oh, Mugi?
Could you have called it something simple like Linksys?
Cool, all right.
Band number 20.
Yeah.
So you can see there, we got a whole bunch of people connecting.
Yes.
All right. All right, so like I said, we'll go through our procedure. So the first thing we do is configure our interface to work correctly. So first thing we want to do, we want to run this check kill using Airmon from the AirCrack suite. That's a process you'll want to run just to make sure that any processes that can sometimes interfere with what you're going to what you want to do here are taken care of. Go ahead and start. And while you're waiting there, if you go ahead and connect to Caminsky.com, spelled like that, Caminsky.com, you should see the website that I'm hosting on the legitimate one. And it should be evident that it's a very trustworthy site.
Oh, yes, very trustworthy.
It's just like Lemon Mart. Yes, it's not serious.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and scan the networks that are in play right here. Cool. So this is basically the scan of all the networks from the attacker machine here. So we can see we've got a network called Helmutje. We can see it's open, and we can see the MAC address of the access point that is hosting this network. So because I have 2 of these cards that I'm using for this, I need to make sure that my scripts here are using the right one. Cool, so good there. Okay, so we should be good to go. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to launch my basic evil twin. So I'm basically going to launch a copy of this network, same ESSID, and just open encryption. Cool, so we should have that. And then let me just position this so we can kind of see. Then I'm going to go ahead and launch my attack script, which will basically send a stream of deauth packets that should hopefully disconnect you guys. Now, this deauth stage, we'll see how well this works. Hopefully we have enough people connected to it. I know that this will at least affect my phone. Some devices, they will reject broadcast deauth. Sometimes they will only respond to deauth packets that are specifically directed at them. You do have the ability to specify the client that you want to direct these deauth packets to, and there are scripts that allow you to basically run through a whole list of them. So hopefully we're able to kind of get the idea without having to do that. But if we do, I can go ahead and pick some random MAC address. What's up?
Questions now or at the end?
Let's go ahead and finish this one, and then we'll handle questions on the basic one before we go to the advanced one. But cool, yeah, thanks for asking. All right. Oop. Oh, and hold on one sec. It's probably transmitting on the wrong channel. So one thing you can run into with arrow dump is you need to make sure that you're monitoring the right channel. There we go. Cool. Yep, and so we should start seeing clients drop off and connecting to the evil twin. Yep. And so anybody who went ahead and visited Caminsky.com, go ahead and refresh that when you get the chance. And you should see that you're no longer connected to just a legitimate version of it. And I'll do one quick one for the camera. It's possible if it doesn't follow the connection. I've been having a slight problem with Wi-Fi connectivity to the local area. In some devices, they will prioritize connections that have a path through to the internet over ones that don't. There we go. You can see there. Cool. Okay, so that's the basic one. Did we have any question on the basic attack?
Yeah, so just a quick question. With the DOF packet, so when I've tried to do this in the past, just using like my own devices, I noticed that like on one attempt it actually would DOF and it would take some time before it would reconnect to my home, and then other times it would DOF and then immediately reconnect. Do you know, like, is there something in place that determines the amount of time before a reconnect is tried? Or anything like that?
No, it's an awesome question. There's a lot of variability with any of this stuff, and that's one of the things that makes Wi-Fi stuff a little bit tricky, especially when you're first getting into it. I remember there was a lot of these things that I was really uncertain as to whether I was doing it right or if that was just kind of in the natural variability of it. You know, I mean, when you're dealing with Wi-Fi stuff, like atmospheric conditions can influence it. The specific device that you're working with, the specific operating system, and kind of the versions of all the software that is going into maintaining that network connection. All of those are variables in play, and so yeah, you can see some pretty variable behavior. It's one of the reasons why if you're going to do a Wi-Fi attack, the bigger your scope, the better, because you maximize your chances of getting at least something that'll come in there. But yeah, as far as kind of like packet for packet. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's why in my attack script, I basically have it set to fire off basically continuous DOF packets. That can be a little noisy because like Wi-Fi intrusion detection and whatnot will sometimes pick that up. But for this demonstration, that will generally suppress it as much as possible. The other thing you might want to try is if you're not, make sure you're specifying a specific client that you're directing those packets to. Because like I said, some clients will reject broadcast DOF packets.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
One more question. You mentioned that your evil network you use for the same SSID. How do you ensure, or can you ensure, that the device will choose the twin versus the original if the SSID is the same?
Yeah, so as far as that goes, so if it's already associated, we'll get a little bit more into this in the encrypted one, but as long as it's associated, the device will try to remain associated with the same access point, but if you disconnect it, it will choose based on signal strength. So if the evil twin has a higher signal strength, it'll prefer that one over anything else. Okay. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. You know, so if you can position yourself so that you're closer and you have a higher signal strength, that can be a way to do it. Or if you have an amplifier of some sort, or you crank the settings. Most of these cards, they are set to only transmit at the legal threshold. But most of them, especially these, it is possible to go beyond that. I'm not going to do that today, especially not on camera. But
you would never do something.
No, but it's definitely possible, and there's definitely hardware out there that you can buy to amp up your signal like that. Cool. Any other questions on the basic? No? Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and continue that. All right. So, basic evil twin. You know, that's cool. That is useful in some circumstances. But at the same time, if it's an unencrypted Wi-Fi network, there's not really anything stopping an attacker from just connecting to that and just sniffing the traffic from that. You know, sure, like if you can get them to connect to your specific network, you can push DHCP settings. That gives you a little bit bigger of an attack surface. But it's not that big of a difference. However, if you can create a plausible evil twin for an encrypted network, you can oftentimes get yourself into a trust position that as an attacker you certainly don't deserve or haven't earned. So we'll do kind of a brief overview here. Anybody who was interested in like the crack attack that came out a little bit ago, you might be somewhat familiar with this, but WPA2 Wi-Fi encryption, it uses basically a four-step handshake. And specifically, one thing to clarify, we're only going to be looking at the pre-shared key version of WPA2. There is an enterprise version that interfaces with the Radius server. We'll leave that discussion for another day. We're going to mostly be just focusing on the typical encrypted network that just has a Wi-Fi password that you need to enter to connect to it. There's basically a four-way handshake. You can see the steps there. Now, all of that is, very, very nice and very, very complicated. But at the end of the day, the way that we're doing this attack, we can essentially bypass all of that stuff because all of that handshake process, it ultimately depends on relatively few pieces of information. And if we're clever, we can obtain those pieces of information and we can put them to use in such a way that we can essentially get past all of that. So let's ask the simpler version here. How does a wireless access point prove its identity to a non-associated client? If you have a Wi-Fi profile stored on your device, how does a wireless access point prove that it's the wireless access point associated with that Wi-Fi profile? Does anybody know?
It's by name only, right?
So ESSID is one. Also encryption method. So WPA, WPA2, WEP, CCMP, all of those things. If there are different encryption methods in use, that can allow the client to tell the difference between it. And then it's a pre-shared key. If you have those three pieces of information, the client can't tell the difference between you and the legitimate access point. Now, if you can match also the MAC address of the legitimate access point and the channel that it's broadcasting on, that's nice. Especially like if you're trying to combat some sort of intrusion detection system. A lot of Wi-Fi intrusion detection systems, they'll look for mismatched MAC addresses is kind of a key indicator to detect attackers. But for clients, they really don't care. That's not significant as far as I can tell. So if you can match those three pieces of information, you can fool any client into thinking that you are the network that it has stored as a Wi-Fi profile on it. And if the attacker can DOF clients at will, essentially it comes down to signal strength, and that's the only determinant. So let's look at our advanced evil twin attack. Now, the aircrack suite alone isn't going to do everything we need in order to launch this. So we're going to be using another piece of software called Host AP, or the Debian version of it, Host APD. This thing basically manages encryption and authentication. It's a pretty cool program, actually. You can set it to point to a separate radius server if you want to implement WPA2 Enterprise. There's a lot you can do with it, but it's included with Kali. It's also free. And then for this one, hardware is also a concern. This was the single biggest obstacle for me in pulling this project off. You need to find a Wi-Fi card that supports AP mode. Now, that is more difficult than you might think. I went through a couple and actually ended up spending some money that I probably shouldn't have trying to get this. The one that I ended up settling on, and the one that you see a lot of tutorials online reference, is the TP-Link TLWN722N. One thing you want to watch out for, though, you want to make sure you get the version 1 that's built on basically the Atheros chipset. There's a version 2 that is out there that will not work. It's a different chipset, and the AP mode functionality has been disabled, probably by design. Because the fact that there are these things swimming around in the world, I can see a company looking at that as a liability thing. They are available now. I don't think they're still being manufactured. So if you do want one, you should probably get it soon because they're probably going to get more expensive. I ended up buying 2. I found a guy on eBay that was supplying them. But yeah, I suspect this might be getting tightened up. The other thing you'll need to keep in mind is you will need a separate interface to inject deauth packets. If you have a Wi-Fi card that is in AP mode, it can't also inject packets. So this one, it's very similar to the one before. Basically, we configure our interface to work in the mode we need it to. We scan and choose our target. We configure a configuration file to use the same settings as the target network. Launch the Evil Twin, DHCP server, deauth, and then we should attract clients. So let's take a look at that. All right. Close it. That's it. All right. So anybody that wants to, you can go ahead and connect to the network helmutier_sec. And the password for that is going to be all lowercase OMG security. OMG security. And let's focus connect. You can kind of see the verbose output there. You see the handshake that's done. Everything is authenticated and assigned a key that it works with. And if you visit Caminsky.com, you should see, once again, the sign that it's the secure version of that website. So let's come over to our attacker here. So if we scan the networks that are available, you can see here, ESSID, Helmut Jasek. And we can see here, encryption, WPA2, cipher, CCMP, authentication, PSK. And for example, you know, if we were to look at like a WPA2 enterprise version, it would have this authentication MGT. So basically, this sequence is the valid targets for the attack that I'm about to show you here. And once again, you can see the MAC address of the base station, and you know, any clients that are in the area that are broadcasting as well. Okay, so we should be largely configured. Let me just see. And actually, hold on. No. Let me grab the MAC address for this. There we go. Configure our attack script here. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and put up our evil twin. Awesome. And then launch our attack script. Yep. There we go. Boom. Folks coming over.
Yeah, mine doesn't DNL for some reason.
It probably needs to be client targeted.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
there you go. And so if you refresh the page, you should see the evil version of it.
There it is.
So you can see right there, you were connected to what appeared to be a secure Wi-Fi network. You entered the password, and with 0 user input, you got shunted over to an evil copy of it.
And that was with knowing pre-shared key.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that in a second here. But yes, that's a very important point.
Yeah.
So based on that, you might be thinking, well, okay, that's all well and good, but yeah, you knew the Wi-Fi password. So, like, what does that prove? This is where we get down to the idea of the intersection of behavior and technology. Most of the time that people are thinking about this, they're thinking about the initial connection to the network. So they're like, okay, this user wants to connect to this Wi-Fi network, so they need the password, they need to enter the password, and they need to connect to that network. And we're also likely thinking, well, I only need to protect my Wi-Fi network. That's not necessarily true, because remember when I asked the question earlier, who here has AutoConnect set for Wi-Fi networks that they've connected to? Any of those networks are valid targets. So remember, once again, the attacker can DOF any client from any network at will. So if the attacker can make an educated guess about other Wi-Fi profiles that a client likely has stored on it, the attacker might be able to suppress your network and force that user to connect to theirs, possibly without even realizing it.
So you're saying that AT&T Wi-Fi network that's open that I don't connect to is not a good idea?
Correct. So here, so consider this hypothetical step-by-step version of a potential attack that could illustrate this. You have an attacker that visits the area nearby your downtown office, and they look and find all the nearby businesses, and they identify, hey, there's a coffee shop that I see a bunch of employees from this place like to go to lunch. The attacker can also go to that coffee shop, and the coffee shop, for the price of, a cup of coffee, will give the attacker the password for that network. Attacker can then create an evil twin duplicate of that coffee shop Wi-Fi network and broadcast it into the office. Attacker then deauths the office Wi-Fi. The office worker devices, at least some of them, because once again, it's checked automatically by default. So if anybody that forgets to uncheck that when they connect to the Starbucks Wi-Fi or whatever, their device, in trying to maintain internet connectivity, will jump over to the evil twin copy that it recognizes. The attacker then gains a man-in-the-middle position on them and can feed them a malicious download by, substituting a mirror website, by, pushing some critical browser update. Once again, you only need like a couple people to fall for that. And then once one or more devices has been compromised, the attacker drops the evil twin and allows that device to reconnect to your corporate Wi-Fi and then spread the whatever was downloaded or reach out to a CNC server to basically let the attacker onto your network. So, a couple points to discuss here. Once again, the reason evil twins are dangerous isn't necessarily because they're impersonating your corporate Wi-Fi. It's because they can target every Wi-Fi profile stored on every device. It's just a numbers game at that point. They need to figure out what is a likely common Wi-Fi network that these people have visited. Once again, if you're in a corporate center, anybody who works in this building, they probably have the profile of the bar across the hall there stored in one of their devices, and probably it's set to auto-connect. The attacker can basically act without authentication using information that is outside of your control and direct that against the weakest links in your organization. So like, you don't get to pick the password of the businesses around your office. You don't get to ask them to change it. You don't get to set policy for who they share that with. That's beyond your control. And you have no say over whether the attacker deauths some of your clients. And even think about this. If a device has multiple interfaces, for instance, you have a laptop that has a Wi-Fi card and also an Ethernet port, if somebody comes into the office, they plug in because they want to hardline to your office network, but they don't turn off their Wi-Fi, evil twin can capture that Wi-Fi, and if they compromise that box, they've got a bridge right into your network. Once again, humans don't ask questions when things appear to be working. There's no reason that anybody would ever think to check any of this stuff out, unless there's an interruption in the service. And I just showed, using nothing but free software, you can very easily do that. So basically, the upshot of this, Wi-Fi equals physical access. But unlike, most physical access, it's invisible and amorphous. Like, it's really easy to lose track of where your Wi-Fi network is spreading. It can be oftentimes quite difficult to really work out whether there's a new Wi-Fi network that is transmitting into your area. And unless you have somebody eyes on glass actually watching for it, or some sort of alert process to pop every time there's an unfamiliar Wi-Fi in the area, nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to know. And if you really want to get scared about this, Wi-Fi, these cards that I have here, they don't have a very long range. But you can, like I said, you can get amplifiers and you can get directional antenna that have ranges of 2 miles or more. And just to kind of show you what that looks like, this is a picture from the window of my apartment.
Awesome view.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I love it. But just for reference, the Renaissance Center there, it's about 1.5 miles away. That's a lot of buildings that I have line of sight to with a directional antenna. And there's, as you can see there's a bunch of other high rises there too. It's going to be very difficult to work out where that's coming from. So, how might we defend against that? Lesson 1, VPN for all connections. You should probably be doing that anyway, because there's lots of other advantages that gives you. But the big thing here is Wi-Fi encryption, while it's nice to have, you really shouldn't consider it an actual security measure, because you can work around that. So any traffic that might cross a Wi-Fi network should be encrypted by a more secure means, VPN or anything else that comes up. Also, whenever possible, disable autoconnect. You don't want your computer basically betraying you. And yeah, like autoconnect, it's convenient, but basically that convenience, you can see what a terrible price you can pay as a result of that.
So even for a known, what you think is a trusted network, you're saying disable autoconnect?
So, I mean, if you know for a fact you have very good control over a particular Wi-Fi network, maybe you can safely autoconnect to that, but definitely don't autoconnect to any network that you don't control. And even then, once again, it's like it saves you a couple of clicks. It's still probably worth it just trying to apply that as a blanket setting as much as you
It's
can.
like a home network where you're not sharing the pre-shared key with everyone.
Exactly.
Maybe that's okay.
Right, but on the other hand, remember, there are there are attacks out there like crack and other things like that do let you extract Wi-Fi passwords. Now, they require a vulnerable client to be connected to that network, but if it's a PSK network, if even one client is vulnerable and the attacker can pull the password from them, they got it. So yeah, probably best autoconnect. The fact that it saves you a couple of clicks here or there is probably not worth it.
One more comment or question on that.
Oh, yep.
So you mentioned, disabling. It's kind of enabled by default, right? So if you can click the box, is there a way to turn that auto default on off in any kind of configuration file?
So I'm not aware of that. That's actually, I probably should have added that to my further investigation. I didn't think to check that. I don't believe Windows does have a setting for that. But if you have the ear of anybody at Microsoft, it might be a good thing to ask for. Like at least the ability to apply that as kind of a blanket policy across an organization at least. But yeah, no, it's an excellent question. Another thing that is probably a good idea, if you're not already, probably define your DNS server that you're using on the endpoint rather than accepting that from DHCP, or even better yet, use DNSSEC so that you have some verification that what you're getting is coming from a secure DNS server and it's what that server actually sent. Because DNS, even if you're requesting it from a legit DNS server, DNS is in the clear. An attacker can intercept that and can swap out IP addresses or anything like that. And then also, if you have the ability, there are Wi-Fi intrusion detection and prevention technology out there. I don't have a ton of experience with these. From what I have read, I suspect they are probably more theory than practice at this point. And especially like if you're in a crowded area with overlapping Wi-Fi ranges, it's going to be really hard to actually implement that because, I mean, any sort of prevention that you might use, you don't want to be like, denial of servicing like neighboring businesses. Like that's illegal. That's an attack. And once again, even then, like, you're getting into some pretty fancy territory. If the attacker can impersonate the same MAC address, same ESSID, same encryption method, same key, all of that, you're starting to get into like really fancy, like, signal analysis in order to try to differentiate between legitimate and non-legitimate access points. I believe there is technology out there, but it might be not be super feasible. But whenever possible, definitely something to consider.
We used to do the MySec meetings at my data center in Royal Oak. We're running Aruba gear. And everyone was always trying to spoof not the way with the ID, but they're always trying to de-auth and everything.
Yeah.
And that actually had some pretty good IPS IDS. Would triangulate and do signal blocking and other things.
Yeah, no, it definitely exists, but yeah, I suspect it's expensive. So some methods of further investigation on this. WPA2 Enterprise, like I mentioned, it uses an alternate authentication method, and rather than using a single pre-shared key for the entire network, it negotiates an individual key for every client. So that ups the complexity of this. I have managed to stand up one of those on my own, but I haven't been able to play with it too much as a plausible attack vector, especially trying to preserve that uninterrupted functionality. But there may be a way to do it. One of the projects that I would really like to work on is kind of an evil twin array. Like you can imagine if you get like 5 or 6 evil twins set up, each one impersonating a separate network, and then channel all that traffic through a single point, you can collect a lot of traffic. And then if you pair that with something like SSL strip or some sort of protocol downgrade that lets you strip away like traffic encryption, like I said, it's a numbers game. That's definitely a way to up your numbers. I suspect there are probably frameworks out there already to kind of automate these types of attacks. I like to go through things kind of the hard way first, just so I can get my hands on all the different pieces. But I'm sure they are out there, and I'm probably going to be looking to maybe create my own, just something to kind of handle the deployment of this a little easier. Like you saw, I was juggling around a bunch of shell scripts and whatnot, and it's very easy to mess that up. I had to rehearse this quite a lot. But then if you are kind of interested in this stuff, I'm going to be putting up kind of the content of this finding, the scripts that I was actually using, and all that information. I'm planning to put that up on a blog that I'm launching. It's infosec.jasonkaminsky.com. It's not currently up, but I'm going to try to get that up in the next couple of days or so, as well as other stuff. But yeah, so thank you all so much. If there are any other questions.
Have you had the chance to play around with the Wi-Fi pineapple?
I have not. I suspect that would be kind of the array sort of thing that we're talking about, yeah.
One of the great things, I have played around with for a little bit, one of the great things that was educational for me is that anytime that you save Wi-Fi access as a favorite, your phone actually beacons out and asks and looks for that access point. So one of the features of the Pineapple is to get a full list of access points that phones around you are trying to connect to, and then you can actually try to set up an evil twin as one of those.
That's huge, yeah. Because if you can just sort of like develop almost like, like a mass like war driving database of like ESSID, encryption method, password, all of that, that would be very scriptable. Yep, no, that's huge. Anything else?
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, I forgot to mention we do have food. Looks like some people are actually helping themselves to it. That's fantastic. It's been supplied by Tech Systems. So if you get a chance and you see them, say thank you and enjoy the food. And then next we have Keyloggers by Gilbert here. So
I might need to use your laptops. I don't have HDMI. Jason.
What do you
I have DisplayPort.
No problem. I got a cable.
All right.
Yep.
Talking about keyloggers and using someone else's computer.
Yeah, I was like,
I was gonna say, and everyone who participated now is a keylogger.
yeah, like, guess again, bro.
That's his live demonstration. I just social is weird.
Thank God that worked.
Oh, we already got that.
Yeah, that's it.
Jimmy Power.
Yeah, I have my charger. I'll plug it in a little bit.
There we go. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Is it? I was like, how much was the fish? I was like, this is an odd.
They would not put fish on the pizza.
You got this corner.
Corner.
That's why I thought that's what it was. Barbecue. This is real fish.
Isn't that like a main thing or?
I'm most
That's when we did a workshop yesterday. And the person who was our coach, you're gonna give me my slides. Well, we can advance. Yeah, no, you're part of 2 days. Yeah, random.
Good? That's fine.
Talk especially handcrafted for you.
My boy.
Good? All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? Pretty sure you all know me. Been on there, it's lagged a bit. So this presentation, actually, there were supposed to be 2 other team members with me, but due to job and PTO, they're not here. So I'm gonna try to cover as much as their section as I can. And mine, we're gonna talk about keyloggers. We're gonna talk about hardware, software, and what security controls we can implement in a business in order to prevent these 2 types of methods. My part was mainly focused on the software side of things, so I'm trying to focus as much as the hardware and the security controls as I can. If some of you don't know me, my name is Gilberto Esparza. I'm a security analyst, same with CVI. I'm part of their implementation group, so right now I'm mainly focusing on firewalls, proxies, and network security appliances. I'm on the Slack, GMexican14, if some of you don't know me like that.
Are you on the Slack
GMexican14. Mainly hang around the CTF channel, you know, doing a lot of meetups with the guys and stuff like that. So you'll kind of see that in some of the demonstrations that I put together. So without further ado, we can get started. So basically, what are keyloggers? Keyloggers can be an application or software that can record real-time user activity, whether it's with or without their knowledge or permission. We'll get a bit into that further on. And they can also be sent back to malicious actors if that's the intent that they were initially, implemented as. Types of keyloggers: kernel driver keyloggers, software keyloggers, and hardware. Those are the 2 that we're going to mainly talk about a bit in this short presentation. So kernel and driver keyloggers. Those keyloggers are the obtain root access and collect data directly from the input device. So kind of think about it as real time. You're typing into the keyboard and it's actively capturing the keystrokes that you are inputting to whatever program there is. We move to the next one. No, my bad. So what makes keyloggers effective? Like I said, they're very hard to detect. They're at the kernel level. As with most exploits and most malware, once they reach to that kernel level, they can be very hard to detect. They blend in very well because they replace the original software's means of interpreting any sort of input. So if you're basically logged into Word and you're just typing away, Word won't know the difference between that keylogger in the kernel or the normal input that it uses. And detection is also made very difficult, like we said again, due to the kernel being executed before any sort of user level software. So even at boot up, that kernel keylogger can be spun up, and once you're on the web, on Word or anything like that, it's capturing the keystrokes as you're going on. So this is kind of what I focus on: software keyloggers. They can be deployed through various means. Just think about it kind of like a spyware, sort of malware type of scenario. They can capture keystrokes at different levels. Unlike hardware and kernel keyloggers, they can capture your screen, record screen, capture your keystrokes or anything like that, without the proper knowledge, of course, of the user. And sometimes, as you can see on the second bullet point, they're deployed on the industry just to monitor users with or without their knowledge. So they're kind of way different than hardware or kernel, since they're built on an application instead of just code being executed out. And like I said again, some of the keyloggers are often referred to as spyware keyloggers just because of that's sort of their main method of deployment. They can be downloaded with something else. I also put right there a Trojan. They can be found inside Trojans. So if you download something else and keylogger via spyware captures on, then that's mainly one of their deployments that they can use. So what makes these more effective than the kernel ones? Newer versions are kind of dedicated to doing this keylogging functionality. They can evade good AV software, and their ability to blend in and just deploy is what makes them better than kernel or hardware. And unlike kernel and hardware, they're often allowed to capture any sort of screenshots and the current screen. So that gives it a bit more of an upper hand on the hardware side or the kernel side. So unlike Jason, who did his live, I recorded mine just for any sort of mishaps that would have happened.
Far more sensible.
All right, no, it's fine, it's fine. You did good, you did good. So I'm not sure if you can share the YouTube screen, Brett. Because I want to expand that one, but it doesn't want to expand.
Open it up and drag it over, perhaps?
Oh, let's see. Because I'm opening it up in a different window. Do you think you can display that, or?
It just has to be on whatever screen you have projected on the front.
Yeah, because I'm moving into that one. That's not it.
I'm going to close the presentation.
Kaminsky,
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mike Caminsky, I recorded mine. Mike Caminsky, I had problems.
And then move that over there.
Oh.
You can try Windows PP to mirror directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just
Try to
mirror
see
that.
it. Or not. Oh. Can you do that? Is that good? You still capturing it?
Yep.
Yep, okay. I'm
recommended.
Shh, it's tied to my YouTube account. I'm gonna speed it up because it took 12 minutes and I don't want to sit here me going through 12 minutes. Come on.
You still know that equals one Wi-Fi?
Probably. All right, so this demonstration is going to kind of show a post-exploitation. So first it's going to successfully exploit, I think this one is through an embedded PDF. So it's going to send it to a Windows 7 machine, and once that user opens up the Windows 7 PDF, it's going to go ahead and create a shell, and then once that shell is created, that's how I'm going to show the keylogging method. If it loads. There it goes, okay. So it's just gonna whiz by, we'll be there. I download a generic PDF file, so you can see invoice, things you see in the normal corporate kind of world. I'm gonna use Metasploit to pull up the actual exploit that I'm gonna be using, which is just embedding it into a specific version of a PDF, and it only targets a specific version of Adobe. Of course, I'm not gonna have the newest and greatest hacks or whatever, but this is just kind of like proof of concept that a real attacker can use, actively exploit 0 days out of Flash, Adobe, or anything like that can get on a Windows 7 machine. I don't know why I did a lot of highlighting. And then I'm also going to use an email server that was spun up on the same machine. So basically just send out email with whatever domain you want. We know that real attackers out there use domains that they take out for a specific period of time, or they have their own domain names that they send out these spam emails from. But for this purpose, I just set up a small Debian email server running on a Kali machine. So right now we have right here, I'm going to import the generic PDF file and set it as a believable name. I think I set up as invoice whenever I made that video. Like I said, 12 minutes of this would not have been fun. So you can see right there, I highlighted the specific versions of Adobe that it only exploits. Of course, in a real corporate environment, they should have the latest and greatest version of said program, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're still running Adobe 7 for some reason, when we're on Adobe 12, or it's not even called Adobe 12, I think it's with Adobe Cloud and stuff like that. So that's kind of another side note, you know, when these sort of companies should have, you know, updated software and stuff like that, because, you know, somebody as easy like me can exploit something like that. You know, we don't want that to happen. So right there, I'm actually setting up, if you're not too familiar with Metasploit and the MSF console, I'm setting up the listener. So, and then just setting up the payload just to listen for whenever that actual PDF gets clicked on and the connection is made. I'm sorry it's blurry, but it was not loading. So right there, I'm going to go ahead and start sending out the email. You can't see it right there very well, but it's going to be from Karen@creditunion.com, you know, somebody you trust. And it's going to be to joe@keylogger.com. I just made that subdomain just because of the whole presentation. And, you know, I put the subject line urgent invoice, something believable, something that a user may or may not click. Hopefully they don't click, and, you know, we've trained them well enough not to click on these sorts of emails. Keep highlighting stuff, because and then I attached the PDF, the malicious PDF that was created through Metasploit. Can't see there, but I was fixing some sort of typo that I had made. But let me just fast forward this a bit. So right there, I just kind of wrote a generic sort of message, like, you know, please look at this invoice PDF attached, you know, it's urgent that we do, blah, blah, blah. And then I put, you know, some fake signature on there, and then I sent out the message. So now we're going to switch over to the Windows 7 user. You know, he's logging in day to day. He's going to Chrome. He's going to his not secure web client, email client. He's logging in. And then, you know, he got this email. He's like, oh, okay, you know, from whoever concerned, blah, blah, blah. He's going to go ahead and open the PDF, because that's what you do with PDFs. You just open them. You're going to get this pop-up. You know, a simple user is going to click through because they want to see what it is. They're not really going to, like, worry about it. And as you can see, I got the actual session already on Metasploit. So this is just a simple kind of proof of concept of what a real attacker can use. Of course, they're not going to be using Kali and these free tools. They have their own, you know, personal built tools that they can use. But as you can see right there, I actually just captured the screenshot of the machine, and I'm going to start actually scanning. And all of this is built inside Metasploit, a free tool built in with Kali that can actually capture keystrokes, you know, live. And this is the part of the software keylogger aspect that I was talking about. So we move back to the Windows 7 user. He's going to send out an email to boss@keylogger.com. He's going to be like, what is this invoice, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to go ahead and switch back in a bit to the attacker looking at the captured keystrokes. It's very badly formatted, but this just shows of what is possible if, you know, an attacker actually puts his mind into sending out an attack, a well-crafted attack. This probably took me, what, 30 minutes to put together, since it's just free tools out there. And don't look at my recommended.
It's okay, it's just broadcasting.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then we're gonna look at
Should have used incognito mode.
I should have, man. And then I'm gonna look at the other one, which this is. Nope, it's not that one. I'm gonna disconnect for a sec. Not because of that. We're all friends here, I hope. Not on YouTube. Alright, there it goes. So this one's going to be using a JavaScript exploit. So basically, I'm going to set up a small web server on the attacker's machine. It's going to send out a link to the to the user, and the user is going to click on the link. And as soon as that link is clicked, the JavaScript will exploit, and is going to capture any sort of keystrokes that happen. We can see this being used in any sort of like, you forgot your password, click here to reset from PayPal whatever, something that you're not going to notice a difference in, and that actual website will capture all those keystrokes. Now we go again right here. It's me starting up the Apache server. Going to, I had already created this small HTML web page with the password reset. Very generic. Hopefully nobody falls for this. If you do, I'm sorry. And then we're going to open up the HTML, and at the very bottom we see the JavaScript sort of headers, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what's called in HTML. But right there, that's where I put in the actual exploited JavaScript that I'm going to generate right now. And once you hit that submit button, that's when it's going to generate that script, and it's going to capture any sort of keylogs. And I just wanted to add that just for fun.
Very fast typer.
I 2 times this. I wish I could 4 times this. It's 12 minutes. And then PayPal, just because, for some reason, it's always PayPal the one that say, hey, you forgot your password, or security advice for you. So right here, I'm going to log in once again to my favorite tool, Metasploit, MSF console, and I'm going to look for the JavaScript module in order for keylog. It should be like JavaScript keylogger or something like that. Probably see me search it up, just this keylogger. I don't know what else to put in there. I was gonna add music or something, but
I will highlight for him too.
yeah.
How many monsters did you down when you made this?
I don't know, man. So once again, it's called HTTP JavaScript keylogger. Simple, very easy to use. I'm pretty sure most of you have used Metasploit. Just simply type in whatever you wanted to do, hit run, and it's going to generate what you asked it for. So that URL is basically that JavaScript that is being hosted on that machine. So we're going to add it to the actual source of the HTML. We're going to name it something funny as keylogger.javascript, and then we're going to save that. And then I actually went to that specific web page, and as you can see, it connected to the client. So of course, the user is not going to see that. The user is just going to see, hit submit, and then even by just clicking that link, they're going to go ahead and go to that JavaScript, and all the keys get logged. So I wanted to be funny. I changed that to the you've been hacked page when they hit submit, just so they know. So I'm going to restart the Apache server, and I think right here, okay. And then I'm actually going to shorten up the URL. I don't want them to know where it's from. I don't want them to know it's like a 10 dot whatever address, be something obvious. So I went to bit.ly. Because if you click on something like this, then you deserve to be hacked.
If you click on a bit.ly?
Yeah, I don't like it. So I show right there that if you click on that link, you actually go ahead and go to that web page, the password reset. I'm going to skip this send email because I spend way too much on it. So right here, I'm just making a believable, once again, email that's coming from support.paypal. Your account has been probably compromised. It'd be a good idea to reset your password, but click on this link that I've attached, just because. So I go ahead, that email.
Yeah, it's your privacy policy been updated.
So email has been sent, and then I think this is where I switch out to the Windows 7 user. So once again, he's going to go on daily business, go ahead and check his email. You're probably still going to see the old email of that PDF. So we see the new one, support that PayPal, looks legit. Hopefully, I don't know, probably not. And then it has the bit.ly link, and it's, you know, reset your password, so you're going to go ahead and, you know, log in because that looks believable. Bam, you've been hacked.
Just like PayPal.
Just like PayPal. So then right here we come back to the attacker's machine, and we see the client actually connecting. Fast forward a bit because I did notice that there was a problem in my video. So once the clients get connected, you're going to see the actual keystrokes coming in. You know, Joe, blah, 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 password Joe. And then once this is all done on the module itself. So once, you know, you can actually go to the actual text file that they were saved in, and then, you know, analyze them again once more. And like I said, again, most of these are just proof of concepts. They're not something that hopefully, I mean, nobody will fall for, because they're just being used by, you know, simple free tools. But this is something that an attacker, if you have a well-crafted PDF, a well-crafted, you know, website, phishing site, or anything like that, can capture credentials. And, you know, that's the big thing about these keyloggers, that they're basically used for data gathering. They're not, you know, used to traverse and, you know, pivot into the actual network, but more of like data harvesting and stuff like that. You think about it kind of like phishing emails. Yeah, so.
Did you actually capture the traffic leaving from the victim to see what it looked like?
No, I did not. Okay. No, that would have been actually interesting to see that. I just did them like I said, I just wanted to show the proof of concept. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like I said, like Jason showed on his, there's many ways that you can actually just expand on, you know, that small proof of concept that, you know, he showed and I showed. So that was software keyloggers. We're gonna move on to hardware, which was on a group members of mine. He actually had a live demo to show. He actually bought this, you know, simple, small keylogger that had Wi-Fi capabilities. So he just logged on his phone, and he would actually lively see, you know, the actual keys being transmitted. Unfortunately, he's not here to show that, but he did include some pictures. That's the one benefit about keyloggers, is that, you know, you really can't tell they're there unless, you know, every day you unplug your stuff and plug it back in. So like I said, it had Wi-Fi capability, so on his phone he was actually being able to capture any sort of live keystrokes. It would have been cooler to actually have him be here and do it, but life happened. So what makes hardware keyloggers effective? Like I said again, they're small size and they have the ability to blend in, no software to install, non-volatile memory. Logging begins at power on, and like that specific one that he brought had Wi-Fi capability. So hardware, they're still effective. They have their own perks, just like software and just like the kernel ones. You know, it's just a matter of fact of what the attacker wants to do and what his end goal is. And then the final part was another member of our security controls. So what we can do to combat the keyloggers that we talked about. Of course, with hardware, physical security, you know, we want to have that in place, you know, not let anybody behind computers or anything that could, you know, easily let an attacker, you know, just put something in between your keyboard and the computer in order to capture all those. Spyware filters on a host machine, that would most typically, you know, block any sort of software keyloggers that, you know, get either downloaded by drive-by downloads or anything unsuspecting by a user, like I showed in the PDF or anything like that. You know, spyware will catch that most likely. Same thing with network content filtering. With these, like he was saying, you know, if you can actually capture the traffic going back with network content filtering, of course, that will block any callbacks that's making it out. So even if the user, you know, was successfully, you know, clicked on the link or clicked on anything, it will get blocked from even, you know, communicating back or capturing anything like that. Same thing with firewall and IDS and like that. And then lastly, he included, you know, prevent unauthorized software downloads. That comes with the spyware, quote unquote, software keylogger side of things. You know, you don't want your user downloading anything just because, you know, they can. Password manager, it kind of made me think a bit. I'm not sure why he included it on there, but it kind of made me think, if you store everything on, on a manager, managing, your sessions or anything like that, it might be less to be keylogged on, important data, but that's something important to think about.
Have you tried that?
No, that would be interesting.
Some of the, not all, but some of the way the password managers send passwords in.
It's encrypted, I think, right?
Well, it's streaming through the keyboard buffer.
Okay.
So I'd be very curious to know. It's something interesting to test.
Yeah.
And well, you could at least capture the master password.
Yeah.
You could capture your master password, yeah. Absolutely.
Or like if to unlog, you can also dump like that
That's
true, yep.
So say on that point, like, most single sign-ons, even if you capture the master password, the passwords for each, for an integer at home, right? The passwords for your accounts don't really matter because they're made through an algorithm. So if the master password is taken, you change it quickly, and then there's nothing tangible about those passwords. You can just change it again. Obviously, that's a pain in the ass, but
Yeah.
I think that's kind of thing with single sign-on.
I think one thing that should be added probably is multi-factor, right?
Yep, multi-factor.
Yes.
Yep. And then, of course, update software. We don't want somebody running Adobe 7 get attacked by me and my weird YouTube history. Go ahead, Ryan.
Another question, the person's in here to really answer this, but for physical security, on the picture it was the device plugged into the keyboard USB, right?
Yeah.
In the computer. When you turn the computer, does device manager pop up and say, hey, a device is being... No, not at all.
No,
Okay.
we've used those in a lot of physical attacks. It's completely transparent to the user.
Okay. So yeah, so really your only option at that point is to
Yeah.
plug the computer every day.
Yeah, put it away.
Unplug it.
You go to so many hospitals or really a lot of retail, like gyms.
Yeah.
Are terrible. And the computer's right there on the front desk. All the ports are open, even the port to the credit card swipes open.
Yeah, we even have monitors like up on the desk with USBs in the side of the monitor.
Yeah.
I don't even think you need that, like where I work, we have like one of the, like a docking station or whatever that has like the external keyboard and mouse plugged in. So when I undock my laptop, that's fine, but like I don't check my docking station when I go in.
Yeah, so one thing you add more cables to our just
Right.
That's why I like to plug a rubber ducky in this piece of code.
I kind of do that. So
And that doesn't even take into account wireless keyboards and mouses.
That's true. Well, yeah, that was pretty much it. I tried to cover as much as I could. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys had fun. It looked like you guys had fun.
Can we go back to your YouTube for a second?
Yeah. And those are the references that we used. Semantic, of course. Really good, small, short article about spyware keyloggers. SANS, of course, big one, and how to detect and prevent keylogger attacks by techtarget.com. So those are the few references. More, I would have added a lot of Kali ones on there, but I didn't have time.
Thank you for not using Bluetooth.
Yep, that's it. Thank you guys for listening.